Afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hello.
So, Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum, so I think once we hit 1:30, we can get going if you're good with that.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Good afternoon and welcome to the August 12th, 2021 meeting of the City Plan Commission. My name is Chris Cummings, Chair of the Commission, and I call this meeting to order at 1:30 p.m. Commissioner Whalen, are you interested in reading the statement to the public?
Actually, Mr. Chair, if we might, can we also just do the roll call?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, thanks. Also, please.
Good afternoon, City Plan Commission. This is Elsa Ramirez, Planning and Inspections, and I'm going to call roll of the commissioners in order to establish quorum for this meeting. Commissioner Almanzan? Commissioner Cummings?
Present?
Commissioner Lorey?
Present.
Commissioner Gallinar?
Also present. Good to see you guys.
Commissioner Kerry Whalen?
Present.
Commissioner Uribe let me know that he wasn't going to be attending. Commissioner Guzman?
Present.
Commissioner Quinn? And Commissioner Reyes.
Present.
Okay, we have quorum for this meeting.
Thank you. Commissioner Kerry Whalen, are you?
Yes, I have the new statement to the public. The City Planning Commission has sole and final approval authority over subdivision maps. Although the Commission is sole and final authority with respect to subdivision approval, this authority is statutorily limited to a ministerial examination of the application's conformance to all applicable code provisions. The staff report for an agenda item may include conditions, exceptions, or modifications. If the Commission does not wish to approve the exception or modification or require a condition, then the Commission's motion will state which have not been approved. Otherwise, the staff report with all modifications, exceptions, and conditions is approved, and the application shall comply with all provisions of the staff report. All agenda items other than subdivision items will be conducted in the form of a public hearing. The normal process is as follows. First, the Commission will hear a staff report, followed by a statement from the applicant. Then members of the public may speak, followed by any final statement from the applicant. Finally, the matter will be closed to the discussion among the Commission. The Commission shall then make a recommendation that will be forwarded to City Council.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. Raul Garcia, Plan Inspections. There are two changes. Item number 5 will be postponed for 2 weeks. Again, that's item 5, postponed for 2 weeks. Item number 6 will be deleted. Again, that's item number 6 will be deleted from the agenda. In terms of changes, that is all. There are 2 items on the consent agenda, and there is 1 revised staff. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, are there any, can I get a motion to
approve item 5 and 6, the agenda.
Is there a second out there?
Second, please.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Are there any members of the public signed up to speak?
We have not gotten notice of anyone to sign up to speak for call of the public.
Okay, thank you. All right, then can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Second, Guzman.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion
Aye.
passes. Thank you. Okay, could we hear item number 3, please?
Good afternoon. Armida Martinez. Good afternoon, Armida Martinez with Planning and Inspections. Let me bring up my presentation. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you just share it full screen, Army, please? Okay, we got it.
Okay. Okay, item 3 on the agenda is the Bill Burnett Unit 1, major combination application. This property is located north of Rojas and east of Joe Battle in the city of El Paso's extraterritorial jurisdiction. This is the plat superimposed onto the aerial. The applicant is proposing to subdivide 185.62 acres of land into 3 industrial lots, 3 stormwater ponds, and 5 other unspecified use of the lots proposed. The industrial lots range from approximately 30 to 52 acres in size. Stormwater ponds range from 0.8 to 5.8 acres in size. The extensions of Bill Burnett and Mercantile Avenue are proposed to be improved and dedicated. The subdivision will be accessed from Rojas Drive and Mercantile Avenue. This subdivision lies within the boundaries of the Paseo del Este Municipal Utility District Number 1. The subdivision application is vested and reviewed under the subdivision code in effect in 2002. This is the preliminary plat. The final plat. The map of the Paseo del Este mud with the proposed subdivision shown, outlined in yellow. And this is Bill Burnett as shown in the City of El Paso's major thoroughfare plan. The applicant has submitted an application to amend the city's major thoroughfare plan in order to realign Bill Burnett Drive, a minor arterial and develop the property as designed. That application will come before you at a later date. With that, staff recommends approval of Bill Burnett Unit 1 subdivision on a major combination basis, subject to the following condition: that the major thoroughfare plan amendment application to the extension of Bill Burnett from Mercantile to Paseo del Este Boulevard be approved by City Council prior to the recording of the final plat. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Yes, Army, this is Commissioner Kerry Whalen. At the right there, we're at Rojas and the extension of Bill Burnett. It's unclear what that kind of triangle shape, the blue triangle, is there at the bottom. No, all the way, yes.
That's a pond, sir.
Oh, that's going to be a pond as well.
Yes, sir. Sorry, it's
Okay.
kind of the same color as the street.
Okay. I thought, I was like, wow, that's a weird intersection. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
Any other questions for staff? Can we hear from the applicant, please?
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi, Ricardo Felix with Train Associates. We agree with staff comments and condition.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? If not, we can have further discussion or a motion.
Motion to approve. With
Second.
the staff recommendations and conditions.
Second, Carrie Whalen.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 4.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. This is Karina Brazgala with Planning and Inspections. Are you all able to see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
All right. Item 4 is a request for approval of the Berryville right-of-way annexation. The applicant is requesting that the city annex a 3.62 acre portion of Berryville Street. It's currently a county right-of-way within the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction adjacent to District 5. So this is right next to John Hayes Street, south of Montwood Drive, and it will be incorporated into John Hayes roadway improvements next to the Eastside Sports Complex. Is the street and the proposed cross-section. The cross-section will be finalized at the time that they do improvements, either through the capital improvement plan or a plat. District property. And then you all have already seen this. It came before you in June as for the approval of the annexation agreement. So the services were approved, City Council approved in July. This is the final annexation ordinance to formally adopt it within our municipal boundaries. And staff does recommend approval of the annexation request as it complies with the city's adopted annexation policy. If you all have any questions, now would be the time.
Any questions for staff? If not, can we hear from the applicant, please?
We'll see. Someone from the county may or may not be on, but at this point, it's City Council has authorized us to institute annexation proceedings. So.
Fair enough. All right. Open to further discussion or motion? Anyone?
Motion to approve.
Second, Carrie Whalen.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Kevin, do we have any other business today?
Yeah, we have item 7, Mr. Chair, under other business. So on this item, good afternoon, Chair and members of the Commission, Kevin Smith with Planning Inspections. For this item, we've been wanting to, for a while, to present to you numerous items to spur conversation, to educate you all, to have discussion about various planning topics. So on some of these agendas where there may be a little bit lighter, where less of a caseload, we're going to be putting some items on to present to you all and to answer any questions you may have and to have a good conversation. Some may be on certain code requirements, some may be on latest planning theories or trends that we see. So this first one here is on detailed site plans. So these come to you on a regular basis, and it'll be numerous staff members presenting these items. And so they've been able to prepare these presentations, and they'll be presenting to you. And so today we've asked Luis Zamora with our department who will be presenting on site plans. And so he'll give a presentation, and if there are any discussions, we'd be happy to answer them. So, but thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, so good afternoon, Chair and members of the Commission. Luis Zamora with Planning and Inspection. So let me share. Okay, so it should be there.
Yeah, we can see it, Luis.
Okay, so So I will be providing some information in regards to the detailed site development plan applications that we received. So let's see. Okay, so I hope that all of you know what a site plan is, or at least have an idea of how one looks. We have one on the screen, right? With some coloring, which is what we usually present, so you can distinguish right of ways, open space, landscaping, where the building is. So while a site plan is a two-dimensional view of a site, it is not to be confused with a detailed site development plan. So what is the actual detailed site development plan? So a detailed site development plan, it's an engineer and detailed drawing of the site improvements and buildings proposed on a property. It illustrates the relation of existing or proposed site improvements to the contextual setting of the property, such as topography, pedestrian and vehicular access and circulation, landscaping, just to name a few. It also can serve as an opportunity for the city and the developer to work together in how to better address certain physical issues, any applicable site criteria imposed by conditions, or any applicable design goals of the community, such as any applicable design and architectural standards. So it is basically a site plan with much more detail and information. But it is also a legal binding document that limits any development in a property to what was initially proposed and approved by the applicable authority. So any future development of a property subject to a detailed site development plan shall be made in accordance with it. And prior to issuance of building permits, an approved detailed site development plan will be reviewed if there is one that exists, or a new one will be required. So when is needed? So it is required prior to development in a special purpose district via a special permit application, or when required per a zoning condition. So some specific land uses on some special purpose districts require review and approval of a detailed site development plan. There's some shown here that usually require one. Developments for a use permitted by special permit in the zoning district classification. Sometimes, if you have not noticed, a staff recommendation will include approval of the special permit and approval of the detailed site development plan. So special permits will be for specific land uses, planned residential developments, for density and dimensional standards reductions, or for infill development. And then particular uses may require a detailed site development plan review due to supplemental use regulations applicable to such use. Some of them are for civic buildings or public spaces, educational facilities, or others. And then for properties that have a zoning condition requiring a detailed site development plan review, such conditions were probably imposed by an ordinance during the property's prior rezoning. And so the ordinance will say review and approval per El Paso City Code, which is mostly administrative, review and approval per City Plan Commission, which is when we take them to you, and review and approval per City Council, which again comes to you and then goes to City Council. So here we have an example of a detailed site development plan. So we have elevations here that will assist us when reviewing for the maximum height. It should have a parking table that will for us to review how many parking spaces, if they're meeting the requirements, review the layout of the parking. It should provide a landscaping table, setback lines, again, for review that they comply with everything. And also we're gonna be looking at any applicable, that the site plan meets any applicable imposed conditions. For example, in this case, in this site plan, for this property, there was a condition requiring a 10-foot landscape buffer between residential, which for this one was all along the north, along the east, and a portion to the southeast. And so we review for that. And then going to the contents of the detailed site plan as required per code. So we have the list. Again, I already mentioned some of them. Some of the main ones to consider will be the legal description of the property, as well as the lot lines with dimensions of the areas. Because again, this will be a binding document, so it will be binding to this specific property. Also, it should be the detailed site plan should include the stamp or seal of a professional engineer or architect. So we're moving into the detailed site development plan review. So the first step, when the staff gets a detailed site development plan application, is that we review. We start by distributing the received application and documentation to other departments that are part of the development coordinating committee. So, and they will provide any applicable comments back to us for review, and then we will forward to the applicant. Once our comments have been addressed, it will move forward for approval of the applicable authority. So we have the list here of the of DCC. So planning division is usually us, planning staff that reviews what we receive, and then comments from landscaping and plan review, which usually are for any applicable standards to the structures of the landscaping that's required per code. Land development will review for site that the site has proper infrastructure or other improvements for the development. Fire, police department, obviously they're, fire obviously with the fire code. Police is usually any issues related to their job, which we will review, see how it affects the development. Environmental services, usually concerned with location of dumpsters, and then if they have proper access to them. Streets and maintenance will obviously check for mostly the traffic impact analysis if it's required. Some metro will have checks for any issues with public transit or bus stops. And then Paso Water for stormwater impacts or the availability of water and sewer service. And then I will skip the last one. So there are 3 approval bodies for a detailed site development plan. So we have the zoning administrator, we have the city plan commission, which is you guys, and we have city council. Please note that public notices are not required for detailed site development plans. So this is you, mostly because basically a use is already permitted. It's just that the city wants to, it's asking, the city will review the location of all improvements for the well-being of the community with no modifications allowed without prior review or approval of such modifications. I know we have issues before where we get some neighbors kind of opposing to it or complaining about it, and well, mostly complaining because they didn't get notices. So this is basically why. So, so after DCC, right, after getting all the comments, staff will review and it will forward to the zoning administrator for approval if meeting the following conditions or requirements. So the zoning administrator approves detailed site development plans for properties that are 2 acres or less in size and that contain no more than 2 buildings. And then that there are no concerns in regards to access or any restriction of access to the site. And then obviously approval if the site plan complies with all staff recommendations and all code requirements. And then gives approval when it is required per code or a condition. Again, requesting the zoning administrator's approval. Also, the zoning administrator can approve any modifications of a detailed site development plan. This will include minor modifications that are in substantial conformity, any minor modifications that represent an improvement in the approved site plan, or minor modifications as required by a governmental entity. And then we have here the definition per El Paso City Code of substantial conformity. Now moving into, I guess, the portion that concerns you the most, City Plan Commission approval. So there is a threshold for zoning administrator, right, in regards to sites and buildings on a property, with CPC taking over review and approval. This will consist for properties that are larger than 2 acres, or properties less than 2 acres that have more than 2 buildings on the property. Also, City Plan Commission will approve when is required per code or a condition. Again, it might be on an ordinance requiring CPC approval for major modifications to an already approved detailed site development plan, or as an appeal to the zoning administrator's denial. I want to note here that as with subdivision matters, CPC has the final authority on approval of all other detailed site development plans, unless a zoning condition, contract provision, or other city code provision or state law require that a detailed site development plan be approved by the city council. Now, under section 20.04.150D3, the City Plan Commission shall consider the following when approving a proposed detailed site development plan. So you all shall consider the boundaries of the tract proposed for development, location and arrangement of structures, determine if the use conforms to all applicable zoning regulations, if Historic Landmark Commission approval has been granted for the architectural design of all structures, if located within a historic district, and that the design conforms to such approval. So we kind of here, we have to see both the HLC approval and what we're bringing to you, that it is the same. And then she'll look at the location of utility right-of-ways and easements, as well as stormwater drainage, the vehicular and pedestrian ways, on-site parking areas, and location of open spaces and landscape planted areas. Now, under subsection 4, in no instance shall the City Plan Commission have authority to vary the yard standards applicable to the districts. And then under subsection 5, the City Plan Commission shall approve the plan if it complies with all applicable code provisions. In the past, we had a discussion about whether you guys can approve something or deny it. So basically, if it complies with all code provisions, then should basically be approved by you. Now, moving on to City Council approval. So Council will provide approval when a zoning condition, contract provision, or other city code provision or state law requires approval from Council. So if the detailed site development plan complies with all requirements, this will be mostly a formality. So City Council also is the only body with the authority to vary any yard standards. Usually going to happen with special permits. Then moving to the final phase. So what happens after approval? So staff will draft a development agreement and get the owner to sign it. Will look like this. Has, it references the property by legal description. We also will provide a approval stamp on the detailed site development plan, and then get signatures from the owner and the approval body. So we have this one here on the right. We have a red box, which is the stamp. So this one was approved only by City Plan Commission. It didn't go to City Council, and it was not administrative. And then when it goes to City Council for approval, we will get a resolution, which looks like this, something much more official than what we had before. And then just to end this, I just want to talk about the enforcement of the detailed site development plan. So it is mostly enforced during the building permitting process. Planning staff will review proposed development to comply with an approved detailed site development plan. So the proposed construction shall match exactly the approved detailed site development plan. If there is none, then obviously we will require the applicant or owner to apply for approval of one. And then please note that a detailed site development plan will expire if construction is not started within 4 years from the date of approval. And then again, just as a final comment, remember that a detailed site development plan is binding to the property, and any proposed construction shall be in accordance with it. And this is all.
Thank you, Mr. Zamora. Any questions for Luis? Anyone?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a question. On page 21, in item 5, could you go back to the page 21, please?
Wait, 25, right? Oh.
Page 21.
Yeah, sorry.
So, item number 5, why bring those, I guess, those site plans to commission if they have to be, it doesn't make sense. I mean.
Yeah, I don't know if legal can help us with this. It is just part of the code.
I wonder what that answer is going to be, because that doesn't make sense at all.
And Guyante Planning and Inspections, part of the reason that that provision is there is so that the item is going through some form of a public process prior to building permit issuance. This condition is typically added to properties in cases where an item may have been controversial at the time of its approval, and it's also the case for special districts per code. So this simply adds a level of scrutiny. I mean, we do hear your point, and it is well taken, especially because the code does require this review to be ministerial, so it would be normal to wonder what your role is in this process. But this is so there is additional visibility that is given to these items prior to their approval.
So if we don't agree with it, or it doesn't make sense to us, there's no way we can deny it? Is that what you guys are saying, or?
Well, you have approval and denial criteria in your bylaws and in your enabling ordinance in Title II. Were you to feel that a particular detailed site development plan before you did not meet the standards that you are to consider for all items, that is something that you could use as a basis. Generally speaking, though, when staff brings these for you, it's after we've worked pretty extensively with the applicant to ensure that all code requirements are met. And, you know, like with all of our items that we bring for you and recommend approval, it's something that we feel as staff is worthy of your approval, generally speaking. It is ultimately your call based on the criteria that you're unable to consider whether to approve or deny something.
Okay, me personally, I do take your recommendation very serious, but sometimes there's something that doesn't make sense. So, but thanks for the answer. I don't know if anybody else has a question.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Mr. Carlos Gainat, I do have a comment and a question. I think Raul wanted to say something, and I'm happy to give him the microphone.
Sure. Thank you for that, Mr. Gainat. No, I just wanted to expand a little bit on what Ms. Gallante mentioned. So these site plans are very similar to the plats, right, to the subdivision plats, which City Plan Commission is the final authority on. However, in that case as well, and this comes directly from the state code. We are preempted from state code in terms of if that plat meets all the requirements of the code, then it shall be approved, right? There is some leeway when waivers or exemptions or modifications are proposed, but overall, the basics of it, if that plat meets the minimum requirements of the code, it shall be approved. And again, that's the way state law is written at this point. We are preempted by state law. And as Ann mentioned, by the time these items get to CPC, we've done all that heavy lifting. We've been working with the applicants and all applicable departments in getting the project to where it is complying with all code provisions. But again, these site plans are kind of in that same nature of these plats that are ministerial in nature.
Mr. Chair, if I could, Raul, thank you for that comment, and Ann, thank you for your comment, and Luis, thank you for the presentation. Let me see if I could help a little bit, because I think that I'm going to make a comment and then ask a question to Mr. Guzman's point. Oftentimes, it becomes frustrating for the commission, right? Because we feel like we are tasked with certain obligations, both legally and administratively, from a planning perspective, right? Not a political one, not an arbitrary one, but sort of looking at it from because I think there are many design and engineering professionals on the CPC that do have some degree of expertise. And so, and you said something really interesting. You said it comes to the CPC after you have reviewed it, right? And so, listen, I get it. I think that you all are professionals as well. You're a professional staff, and you are employed by the city of El Paso to do the work that you're doing, and we're all very appreciative of it. But I wonder if, and so that's number one. Number two, there are instances though when a zoning process it's a give and take, right? If it meets the code and the applicant is not requesting a parking reduction, a setback reduction, landscaping reduction, there may be a few other exceptions or variances, then I think you're in the right. I think you say, there's no leeway. It's black and white, and that's how it should go to the CPC. But I also think that sometimes the detailed site plan process is a conversation with the planning staff to go to give and take, right? So the applicant may say, hey, listen, Ann, here's our detailed site plan. I need a setback variance or I need a parking reduction. I think that's where the staff can say, okay, in exchange for this, we want this, right? It's a quid pro quo, and I say that in the purest sense of the term. It is a this for that. And so that's number two. So I'm wondering if it might be helpful to the staff and maybe to the CPC if the CPC were to look at the detailed site plan at the onset, right? Because once you have given it to us, you're right. You have spent 2 or 3 months with the applicant. The applicant has spent several thousands of dollars with design professionals to lay out the site plan. And so by the time it comes to the CPC, right, we're a little bit, our hands are tied, one, from the staff perspective, because you're saying you have to approve it or else. And number two, from a professional consideration to the applicant, because we recognize that if we were to ask for a modification in their detailed site plan, that costs time and money, right? It's not just moving a line in AutoCAD. They have to pay an engineer, they have to pay an architect. Again, dollar, it translates to a fee to make any changes. And so I'm just wondering if it might be helpful moving forward, and maybe not in all instances, if we get the detailed site plan at the beginning, you review it, we're reviewing it, the applicant's reviewing it. We may, at the end of the day, come to terms and say, hey, listen, from what we see our preliminary review of the detailed site plan, it's perfect. There's no modifications. Maybe that's going to be 9 out of the 10 cases, right? But maybe there's an instance in which, had we seen it at the beginning, we may have been able to offer, again, because you have engineers, you have architects, you have planners on the commission, real estate agents or whatnot, that do have some degree of professional expertise that may have made the process easier for both you and the applicant. Fair or not fair? And if you disagree, that's okay. But I just think that that's a comment that many times we all feel sort of frustrated, because there are some elements of the detailed site plan that we would want to review, but guess what? It's already too late, Mr. Gallinard, Ms. Laurie, everyone else. It's just stamped the detailed site plan. Okay.
Carlos, I'd like to jump in on that trail of thought, because there are many times that I'm looking at these thinking, I just don't get why we have to approve the sort of on-site ponding park situation. It always seems like the alternative that we could have thought through it. And I think that staff does an amazing job, but I feel like I haven't done an amazing job because I feel like my hands are tied at this point. Like you said, it's not just moving a line in AutoCAD, it's a lot of money and time that goes into this process. I also would like Luis to kind of drill into why we wouldn't do public notices for detailed site plans. I mean, it seems like that would be in certain situations.
So, excuse me. So public notice is not required. It's just per code. There's no requirement for it. I do see your point, but then again, it is an issue, this subsection 5, because even if we get neighbors, complaining about the development, what are they gonna do? Because we all still have to approve something if it complies with everything. Most of the time, they start complaining. Let's say for apartments, they don't want anything on their rear yard, 2 stories or more. I mean, basically, we just don't send public notice because it is not required. And I don't know how.
Isn't that because there's a legal right to use that property, and if you're not changing the use, then that's where you'd have to get the requirement.
Yeah, so basically, like I said in the presentation, basically a use is already permitted. It is just the city wants to review how the layout of the development. It is not like a special permit or like a rezoning that will impose something new. And then also, again, development will be it will only allow whatever that was approved. It's not like they just can come in with something new and build it without the city reviewing again.
And I think part of Commissioner Lorai's question was in regards to the intent behind the lack of public notice requirement. And I think that ties back to the fact that the review is ministerial. And so as Luis said, provided it meets all of the applicable codes and provisions. It's not involving a decision that involves the introduction of a new use to the property that wouldn't be permitted. It's not going to involve, if it's one for CPC approval, a reduction in requirements like parking or setbacks or things like that. I think it ties back to the nature of the review as ministerial. But the point is well taken, and it's understandable why the question would arise, and why there would be discussion about the necessity of that standard or the reasoning behind the standard.
Certainly, and I can understand why we wouldn't want to, spend our entire life in this meeting. So what is the pathway to code change? If I were a citizen, if I were, that person that had an issue with legal codes pertinent to my neighborhood.
So it depends what code you're talking about. If it's a city code, that's something that is approved by city council. But as was noted a couple of times, we're preempted often by the state. And so that is approved every 2 years as part of the legislature. So like one of the things as noted for subdivisions, one of the frustrating things that I think the state saw is when replats came in, residential replats, and we notified before they changed the code, before the city plan commission hearing, we'd be notifying beforehand to come to this public meeting where it'd be like, I'm sorry, basically you can't, it doesn't matter, it meets all the code provisions, CPC has to approve it. And so members of the public were starting to get frustrated with it. So I think that's why they made the change about, okay, you don't have to notify beforehand. I think that's part of the reason why the notification is on this here. If it meets the code provisions, at the end of the day, the use is there, it's not changing, and it's just a reason from, one of the items that Luis mentioned, why a site plan may be required. So I think Ann has some more things to add.
So I guess my dog on a bone issue is on-site water ponding and pond parks. So what would be the path to improving that code?
So I think for that was actually something that was brought up by CPC previously, and it's something that I think we'd be looking forward to presenting to you all for on-site ponding and for the park ponds that often, people want to see more of items like that. So that's something we'll be looking at bringing forward here shortly.
Can I ask you?
I'm sure someone else was trying to speak. So, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, you all were frozen. I didn't hear what you said. So I might be repeating. But yeah, it's always been my question at the presentation level when a applicant is there. I ask them every single time, did you consider using a park pond on this instead of a pond? I guess now is the opportunity for me to ask you, is staff encouraging that? Is there any sort of incentive for these folks to do that? Because obviously they're going to be using more land area. They're going to have to, I'm sure there's a give and take as far as the advantages and disadvantages, but my question is it encouraged at the staff level? And if it's not, is there a way to incentivize park ponds and make better use of the land?
I can answer. We try and encourage that from developers, but at the end of the day, if they meet the provisions of the code. Also, I don't want to stray too far from the topic of talking about site plans. One thing that I will say is one of the things that we are doing as staff is we are working on various amendments to our codes, and we're going to be working especially on Title 20 over the next few years to make amendments. And definitely some of these items that are being brought up this afternoon, some of the questions and comments, those are definitely things that we can evaluate and look at, and at the appropriate time bring back, for y'all's consideration as make recommendations to council to actually make the code changes.
Kevin, isn't it like super relevant to detailed site development plan? I mean, ponding.
There's a difference. I'm not aware of too many detailed site plans that have park ponds. I could be corrected. Anna Rel can jump in, but on-site ponding is something that we have to consider to make sure that the drainage is appropriate, and that is something that is looked at. How is the drainage being addressed on a site? And I think you may have a comment, please.
Yeah, I have two comments. One I want to make because it circles back to an earlier point before we sort of went off on this tangent, and that is one of the reasons that a detailed site development plan is required is because it locks the development into a particular use. Once that, and also design, once that use and that design have been approved and the signed development agreement has been executed, it may only be used for that thing unless the applicant comes back and repeats the process. And then second point that I want to address is in regards to park ponds. While we can potentially encourage their use, they ultimately need to be accepted by two entities that are not us. One is parks and the other is land development, because given the particulars of a site, it may be that there's not enough space to accommodate the water unless the slope and the depth of the pond are such that it cannot be used as park or landscape swale or whatever. It's something that we do encourage when possible. It's something that on every single storm water comment that's made on items that go forward, low impact development is encouraged for them to use landscaping areas to absorb part of their anticipated stormwater displacement, for them to use depressions and swales and things like that. The success or failure in those ultimately is going to be in whether that would capture the need. Now, under the current code, if they just put little fenced in detention or retention pond, it meets the requirement, and we don't have a mechanism by which we can circumvent that, or we can require them to do things that the code doesn't say they must do.
And there's no way to incentivize it, I guess.
We actually do have that as as one of the selective criteria for our infill special permits. We do have as one of the applicants must pick at least 3 of the selective criteria in addition to the 3 mandatory criteria. One of the selective criteria that they could choose is the low impact development management of their stormwater. So it is something that we do actually offer incentives for. So that's in the infill special permits. And then that's also the same set of criteria that economic development uses when they grant infill incentives.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions, folks? What does it mean? It should make sense to me, but what does it mean to vary the yard standards? Are you? What does that mean?
Yeah. So setbacks.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
sometimes when they're encroaching, the only way, obviously, if they don't want to remove something, I mean, they can request a special permit to reduce the setbacks.
I get it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
For any other issue, like let's say topography issues that might have, present an issue for the property and for development in the property, then that. But yeah, again, city council is the only one that can approve a different setback than what the district requires.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, folks?
Mr. Zamora, can you go to the slide? I think it's the next slide or the previous slide of the list of things we can do. Okay, yes. Because I do like, I mean, just to return again to Mr. Guzman, Mr. Gallinar's questions of kind of not, I felt like, I haven't been on the commission that long, but there's been those tense moments of, well, we have to approve this, and I do wonder what Mr. Gallinar was talking about. Is there a way we could be kind of included in earlier if these are things that we can this seems to be the list of things that we kind of do have say in. Am I still on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Well, it does say that you guys shall consider the following. I'm not sure whether it can be interpreted as that you have the, authority over anything of this, or just when giving your approval or recommendation to City Council. These are the things that you can look at. You should look at. Again, I don't know. I guess it's it needs probably a talk with legal about how much you guys can do about each things. I don't know whether, I mean, you can maybe request that even the parking areas are already complying with code. Maybe you want them to put it somewhere else because of I don't know, the sign issues with the community. I don't know.
I think to open up the review to this whole body would be burdensome to the process. And I don't know if this would be possible, but possibly a small subcommittee of the CPC could be involved in just sort of the correspondence on it, so that they can take a glimpse early on at what these are and see maybe how the process goes as far as recommendations from staff. But I would say, 2 or 3 of us, and if that's even feasible, I think too many cooks in the kitchen could create a problem, slow the process down quite a lot, but maybe that would be a solution.
Yeah, I think one thing they'll have to look at, maybe Russell, if you want to add on to just about development rights here in Texas and rights of property owners. Russell, I'm not sure if you want to be able to speak to some of that.
This is something I'm going to have to look at a little bit and see what I can figure out with that language, the ministerial portion, and then these portions here. Do a little research. I'm not super familiar. Do you know what section of the local government that comes from, Kevin? Or if it's something that we created?
Russell, I'm gonna have to get back to you on local government code section. So, but we can coordinate, and I think this be, I think we're having some good conversation, and I think as we look at some of these items, as we look at amending our codes or updating them, these are definitely things we can look at and see, what maybe can be done a little differently, based on the confines we have.
Kevin, I'd like to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Commission, during the every other year code review, is there a community component to this? Is there an architectural component outside of the actual city planning structure that acts as an advisory, somewhat on the level of the way Albuquerque and Austin does their code writing? I think Austin is really kind of famous for that, and they, it shows in
Yeah, so
their planning, good and bad.
Yeah, so let me see if I can answer that question. So when we look at amending our codes, obviously we do research and the best practices for what's done around. At times, depending on how extensive, we may get a consultant on board to assist us with that. But additionally, we'd also want to do public vetting to make sure the appropriate folks that are maybe impacted by potential code revision are included, including architects, engineers, members of the public. So all those are taken into consideration, and then go through that vetting process, and then eventually, bring it to the CPC and council. And obviously, there are times where we do create subcommittees as well. So we also have a developers group that we have every meeting every month that we use as a forum to vet code amendments, which are composed of engineers and architects and other professionals, construction professionals in the area who vet these, who see the pros and cons and then make recommendations and amendments as we look at bringing them forward to consideration eventually to council for changes. So it depends on a number of factors if we wanted to make specific code provisions, but we do have a process and we do our best to do proper vetting, and if needed, even members of the public, we want to make sure they're involved so that if needed. A lot of these are a lot more technical, and a lot of them aren't going to have to worry about a detailed site plan, but that's where we would engage a lot of the our customers that we deal with, the professionals.
Yeah, I feel like El Paso, maybe the issues of water harvesting and open lands, I think we could do a lot more work on that. Is that something that the city of El Paso is interested in?
I think overall, and this will be a very general statement, and I apologize, but we're looking at making a number of large changes to our codes. Changes are going to be coming to them over the coming months, over the coming years, because we're not satisfied with our codes. I think they're fine. They've done well for where we're at, but I think they could do better. And I think a lot of our community is wanting to see better development. And I'm personally looking forward to working with you all, working with staff, working with our various stakeholders to make those changes, because it's something I think we do need to take El Paso to the next level. And so we are looking at making a number of changes, like I mentioned.
What is the timeline on that, Kevin?
It's ongoing. We're coordinating with a number of different entities, but they'll be coming. Probably they'll be ongoing over the next 3 or more years. It'll be a constant process. We'll be taking different phases to y'all.
By that point, we may be gone. So, Martina, if you're interested in being on a subcommittee to discuss low impact development and some other things that we're interested in, park ponds, let's do it. Let's create that subcommittee. And anyone that's on the CPC that wants to join that subcommittee, send me an email, and we'll start meeting. And if we could have staff support, that'd be great. But I've been talking about it since I've been on the CPC, and the subcommittee has not been formed or created yet. So I'm kind of done talking about it. I'd like to do it with staff support, and any CPC members would like to join. I encourage it. So.
And I think one final point I may add is we'd be happy to at a future CPC meeting to develop, to present the rollout, the proposed phasing, so you all can set expectations to when you're going to be looking forward to seeing some of the items moving forward. So, but I know we're talking about site plans, and Russell will probably jump in here, but we look at making a lot of these changes over the coming.
Yeah, I just want to say if you all want to do park ponds or discuss that or subcommittee items, just for open meetings purposes, we should post it on the next agenda, and then we can have some information for you. Staff can have on how to do subcommittees, what the correct purview is, and all of that. And then they can, make sure so we don't have any open meetings issues or quorum issues.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, any other questions for staff? We appreciate it very much.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. I'm glad I like these little educational sessions. I hope we continue to do them. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zamora.
Yeah, this is something as staff, we're looking forward to doing more of this one. I think the conversation is more robust, which we're pleased for. They'll range in topics and durations. So just little tidbits here and there we're looking forward to presenting to you all.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chair, if I might just real quick, one second, is just for notification or to inform the commission it's looking like in September, due to the Texas governor's order for the Open Meetings Act, it may go back to the way it was. So we may be meeting in person coming in September. We're trying to get some information and details, so we'll provide that to you all as soon as we can. We just want to give you a heads up that in September, there may be some requirement for us to meet in person.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'll entertain that motion.
Mr. Chair, so
Yes,
moved
sir.
to adjourn, please.
Thank you.
Make the motion to adjourn. Yes.
A second, Carrie Whalen.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey. Bye, everybody.
Thank
Have a good day.
Bye. Thanks.
Aye.